Hello and welcome to In the Kitchen with Mama. And if this is your first time joining us, thank you. I appreciate that. But if you missed that first episode, please go back and look at it. It's a delicious appetizer, pepperoni bread. It's one of my family's favorites, and I think you would enjoy it too. So let's get started with this week's. First of all, this is my oldest grandson, Parker, and his favorite of my recipes are the meatballs. So he decided he would help me do a meatball recipe video. So with that being said, I'm going to do my housekeeping, which is make sure your hair is tied back. The other thing is sanitize and wash the area that you're working in. Third, wash your hands. Always make sure your hands are washed or wear gloves. Today's recipe, gloves are needed. Okay, Parker, let's get to it.
Let's get started. So, like Mom previously said, you want to make sure your hands are washed, which mine already are. And then you want to put on your gloves. Make sure everything is nice and sanitary.
Oh, and the apron. I did want to bring that up. I always wear an apron when I'm working. Of course, mine says my mom, Debbie. I always request that my grandchildren wear aprons when they're in my kitchen. I know this sounds silly, but what's the first thing you do? If you're working with powder or something, you're always looking for somewhere to wipe your hands. This is what I do.
So let's get started. So to get started, you're going to mix all your ingredients into your bowl right here. You want to make sure you have all your ingredients previously laid out and measured so you don't forget any of the measurements, you don't forget what to put in.
Okay, one thing about the ground pork and beef, if you just go to your average grocery store, I think you just pick up a meatloaf mix. I think that would be the common thing. I always get mine at Papa's Market in Wilmington. I order ground pork and beef. He mixes it. I don't even know what the mixture is, but he mixes it. I'm pretty sure it's the same as a meatloaf mix. And I do the same for my cheese. They grate it right in there for me. And I buy bags of grated cheese in there.
Next, we got the 1 egg. So you're gonna crack it into a bowl and then pour it in so you make sure you don't get any shells into the mixture. Be careful not to get any shells in there.
How'd we do, Parker?
I think we did pretty good. I don't think there's any shells. You wanna look in that, see if there's any?
Nope, no shells in there. Pretty
We're
good.
just gonna pour it in. And then that's done with. So next we have the 1/2 cup breadcrumbs. Already got that measured out right here. Pour that right in. You got the 2 tablespoons of the grated cheese. Pour that in too. So you want to make sure you have everything spread out so it's not just piled into one clump and it's all spread evenly throughout the mixture.
Because it does make it harder to mix. If you just throw everything in the well, then it takes longer to mix and incorporate everything together.
So first up, we have the 2 tablespoons of parsley. Like I said, we're going to spread that evenly throughout. We'll just dump it in. Next we have the teaspoon of salt. This you are going to measure. You don't want to put too much.
Make sure it's a light teaspoon. It calls for a teaspoon. I always go lighter, especially, if you don't want a lot of sodium in your food, because you can always salt afterwards.
Into the pepper. You can spread that out evenly too.
Yeah, and we love a lot of pepper in our meatballs.
The crushed garlic. Pop that right in there. Now, you're going to start mixing all of it in the bowl. You make sure you have the mixture spread nice and well so it's all combined with each other. You don't have clumps of just seasoning in your meat.
And while you're mixing that, Parker, I want to mention that after we're done with the meatballs and he rolls them all out and everything, I'm going to have a short video on the sauce and how I make my sauce. Everybody has their own favorite sauce, but I'm going to just do a video on mine. So
don't be afraid to get your hands in there, get dirty. You're wearing gloves, you'll be fine.
yeah, that's true. But make sure you incorporate all those ingredients well, because you don't want one meatball and not to have enough cheese in it. So, okay, Parker, I think that looks pretty much like you've got it all
just
together.
Just about done. So
Yeah.
I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's all mixed.
Okay.
You can see it's all mixed well, it's all uniform throughout the meat. Now what you're gonna do, you're gonna start getting your meat and rolling it into about 1 to 2 inch balls, I think
Yeah.
I'd say.
I don't know if I mentioned this or not, so I'm gonna bring it up now. If I'm having meatball sandwiches, I always make my meatballs a little bit smaller. It's much easier to fit them in the roll than if you have this huge meatball and then you go take a bite and it falls out. So this way the rolls capture the meatballs and they don't fall out all over the place.
Yep.
So he's gonna make them smaller because today we're having meatball sandwiches. Very good.
This is about the size you want it. If, like Mom said, if you're making the meatballs. So
If you're gonna have pasta, and that's mainly what the meatballs are for, I always make them a little bit heartier because there's nothing prettier than a nice dish of pasta, ravioli, gnocchi with a nice meatball on top of it. So, you know, it's all depending on what you're doing. It looks perfect. We usually get 13 to 15 meatballs out of this recipe, depending on whether your meatballs are for sandwiches or pasta.
Alright, so we're finishing up, rolling up all these meatballs here. We got about 14 here. What's next, Mom?
So what I normally do with mine, and as I said, I think you left early the last time I made
Yeah,
it.
left early.
A lot of times I'll just take some garlic and I'll place it in the baking dish. Then I drizzle a little bit of oil on the meatballs. And I add just a little bit more salt and pepper. It flavors it a little bit better. When you add salt and pepper at different times, you get different flavors from them. That's what I found out through the years. So I always try to like at least have 2 layers of salt and pepper on my food, like when I mix it and when I put it in the oven or when I serve it, one or the other. So we're ready to go in the oven. We've already preheated the oven to 350.
Different ovens, different.
Yeah. If you have a slow oven, you might want it to be 375. And leave it in there anywhere from 50 to 60 minutes. Usually does it. So let's put them in the oven, Parker.
Already got the oven preheated, so don't gotta worry about that. Make sure you don't burn yourself.
Always a good thing. And I'll set the timer for the 20 minutes because here's the thing, you want to roll them. Get a spoon and roll them about 20-25 minutes in. So I'm going to set the timer for 25 minutes and then after that I'll reset it, determine how long they're cooking because they are the smaller ones now for the meatballs, so they might not take as long. All right, we're going to get ready to make the sauce now for the meatballs. So I do want to mention, and I don't know whether Parker had talked about this earlier, the recipes for the meatballs and for my sauce will be in the description on YouTube. So let's get started with the sauce. First of all, I always use a can of Tomato Puree. And I try to get as much out of there as I possibly can. I also want to tell you what I do because I'm going to add water to this. I take a can of water and add to it. I always make sure I wash the outside of the cans before I even use them because I usually go back and just get water just to get all the residue out and use it. And I do the same with one can. It's a smaller can of the tomato paste. And like I said, the recipe will be included in with the video. So make sure you look at the recipe. You can use any brand you want. Everybody has their own special brands. And I'm not going to say anything about that except use what you like. Just so you get the amounts done. All right, I scrape everything out. And Parker, I'm going to have you add a little bit of water to this and kind of shake it. So one of the crazy things that I do, and this is what my mother used to do all the time, is first thing I do is I add a half onion and just let it sit in the sauce. Okay? Okay, could you put it in there for me, Parker, please? And if you couldn't get it all out, do one more can. So what I'm telling you is we add cans of water to the puree and to the paste. And then it helps with the, because you know sauce cooks down as you cook it. We always simmer it at least an hour or 2. So I usually let it simmer an hour before I put the meatballs in. and then probably about another hour afterwards, at least. It can simmer all day in my house. Thank you, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Okay, and then we stir in. I just added the oregano. I'm gonna add some black pepper now. We don't need as much black pepper as we did like in the meatballs. It's just a touch on that. And then some parsley flakes. So we'll need some salt in here too.
I'll get that for you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I put it aside when you were doing the meatballs and I forgot where I put it. Just add a little bit of salt in there. It doesn't need a lot. I'll tell you a funny story. The first time I ever made my pot of sauce, my mom gave me her recipe, and I made it. It was the most flat tasting sauce I ever had. Well, she never said put salt and pepper in there. She just assumed that I knew to put salt and pepper in there. So I had to add salt and pepper and let it sit overnight so the flavors all worked into it. But it was like, why isn't this tasting right? It was the worst sauce ever. So I've added all my ingredients, my oregano, my parsley, my salt, and my pepper. I have tomato paste in there. I have tomato puree in there. And I added about 3 cans of water because the sauce will cook down. Another secret I have to my sauce is, I told you where I get my ground beef and pork. I also buy their hot sausage. And I'll throw a couple hot sausage in there. I'll cook them and I'll throw them in there. And the flavor between the meatballs and the sausage, that's what really gives your sauce the best flavor ever. So we're gonna let this simmer for a while and I'm gonna clean up the mess that I made around it. And then when the meatballs come out, we'll be able to put them in, okay? So let your sauce cook for about an hour, just about the same time that the meatballs are cooking. We'll take the meatballs out, we'll drain them if there's anything to drain, and then we'll put them in the sauce and let it cook for another hour or 2 afterwards. Okay? We'll see you in a little bit. Well, welcome back. Our meatballs have cooked an hour in the oven, and we've taken them out, put them on some paper towels in a colander, and have drained them, got any of the excess oil off of them. And so now we're gonna put them into the pot of sauce that has already been simmering for an hour. So Parker, you wanna start putting them in there. And we put them in there, we cook them for at least another hour before we make sandwiches out of them, but sometimes my family doesn't wait that long. So if you can get away with it, do it for about an hour. The other thing is I want to mention, I know you're thinking meatball sandwiches. How many sandwiches are they going to get out of 15 meatballs? Not many. I always quadruple this recipe. Sometimes I have meatballs in the freezer. And that's another thing I want to talk about. If you're busy, especially over the holiday season, you can roll these meatballs out. I put them on a cookie sheet. I freeze them in the freezer. And then when they're nice and hard, I bag them. That way, when Christmas comes and I have 150 meatballs that I'm cooking, I didn't waste a day before Christmas making meatballs. So he has put all the meatballs in there now, and we're gonna let it simmer for about another hour and a half. Scrape around the edges, get all that stuff off the top and get it in. Make sure that all the good stuff is there. And you do it uncovered, but on low, let it simmer. And you'll be able to tell when it's ready because the sauce starts sticking to the meatballs. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna let that simmer for about an hour, maybe longer. We'll see how long we can get away with. And then we're gonna come back and we're gonna make some meatball sandwiches and enjoy them, okay? So here we are, we're back in the kitchen with Mama, and the meatballs have simmered for now 2 to 3 hours. It's actually been 3. So Parker, you want to show them after 3 hours how the sauce clings to the meatballs? You can see the, I hope you can see, I hope it's close enough. But now the sauce out actually encases the meatballs. So he's going to show you his meatball sandwich that he loves to eat. I'll probably devour it here in front of us also. Explain what you're doing, boy, because one meatball is not going to get it.
Takes about 3 meatballs for this type of roll. Let's cut it in half so it fits better. Last one. There you go.
Okay.
And
now, let's just talk about this for a minute. You don't put any cheese on yours. A lot of
I
people.
don't put any cheese. I'll put Doritos on mine. None of my family likes it, but it's good.
Doritos?
Yeah, Doritos.
Okay. What? That's a new one on me. Grandchildren all use Parmesan or provolone, except for the exception standing next to me who uses Doritos?
Doritos.
Really? Okay. I love how I find things out. Stay tuned for us next month for episode 3. But what I'd like to say is keep in mind that these recipes are going to be on this channel, my channel, forever. As long as YouTube's there, these recipes will be there.
So that's why it's important to like, share, and subscribe if you like our videos.
Yes, please do. And share it with everybody you know. Okay? Anything else, Parker, you think we're leaving out?
Yep. So
Okay.
have a good day.
Have a good day. And we enjoy doing this. So please come back for episode 3. Thank you.